Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. So I do want to do just a brief introduction of myself, share some background on who I am, and if the interpreter has any questions or anything, she will pop up and pop down as needed. My name is Richard Rose. However, a lot of people prefer to call me Ricky. So that started when I was young and continues to this day. Richard, you know, when you look up the name in the dictionary and the historical connections, what I found is that Richard means king. It's powerful, you know, control, and that's really just not who I am. So I've stuck with that nickname of Ricky, and my sign name is this. Again, the R across the forehead. I'll do that again for you to demonstrate. And that sign name is part of classifiers, and that's our topic for today, classifiers. So I'm going to teach you some ASL classifiers today. And again, my sign name that I'm demonstrating here is a classifier. I'll give you some more information on that. And when we close, you know, please remind me, ask me the question, why is this your sign name? And I'll share that with you, okay? So we're going to hold off on the sign name and the explanation until the end, but please do remind me. So I come from a deaf family. My parents are deaf. I do have siblings. There are 5 of us in total, and our entire family is deaf. I am the oldest. I have a brother, Mike, and then I've got 3 sisters. I've got Sandra, Deborah, and Norin, and we are from a deaf family. So of course, growing up, we used American Sign Language. We went to the American School for the Deaf. I graduated there and went to Gallaudet University, and now I'm an ASL PI. So what does that mean? I do ASL assessments, I do the test, the interview, and analysis of that exam, and I've been doing that for the past 7 years. So that's me in a nutshell. And today we do have an agenda. We're going to start with the beginning of ASL classifiers. So we're just learning here this evening. And it's my pleasure and an honor to be here this evening. And I thank you all so much for inviting me to be here. So ASL classifiers, what is that? Let me explain. When we talk about ASL classifiers, there's something I want you to understand before you attempt to use these classifiers. So take a moment, sit back, retain it, let it absorb, understand the rules. It's imperative that you understand these rules that we're going to talk about. It's important to understand the whys. Get familiar with that, absorb that, and then just watch. I'll demonstrate, and much like osmosis, you will learn. You will learn this new approach to signing, if you will, this visual language with a concentration on classifiers. So how do we know which classifiers to use? How do you know what's appropriate? How do you know which hand you should use? Should you use one hand, your dominant hand, your recessive hand, both hands? When do you use classifiers? How do you decide when you're going to use classifiers, or when you're going to sign a specific word, or when you're going to sign a question? How do you make those decisions? We're going to introduce these concepts and provide an explanation. We also need to consider how we sign the classifiers. There are some do's and do nots associated with classifiers. So it's imperative that you understand these rules before you start using classifiers. One of my favorite things to do is teach. I've been teaching for many years. And one of the things I love to teach is sign production. So what does that mean? It means how the clarity of your signs, the hand shapes that you're using, and incorporating the 5 rules that we're going to review today. These 5 rules are known as ASL parameters, and those 5 parameters can apply to every aspect of signing. Numbers, for example, there are rules associated with numbers, time, age, and how they go through those 5 parameters. Finger spelling and the lexicon is included in those 5 parameters. The use of space, again, also included. And size description or directions even are also imperative when thinking about these 5 parameters of ASL. So again, it's critical that we understand the sign production, the what's, the whys, the clarity. These 5 parameters are very important. Number 1, hand shape. And I'll give you examples as we continue. Number 2, movement. Oh my goodness, I just realized I'm not sharing my screen. Hold on, time out. I'm not sharing my screen. Give me just a moment. Okay. I apologize. I'm sorry, I was not sharing my screen. So let me go back. You should be able to see my screen now. And again, this is what I was just explaining, what we do, how we use these. And then we've got the 5 parameters outlined here. So let's start again. The first one is hand shape. The second one is movement. The third one is location. Where? On the face, on the body, in space. The fourth one is palm orientation. So what direction is your palm facing? How is it oriented? There are various movements associated with that. And the final thing is non-manual signs. So those lip movements, facial features that coordinate with the signs to make a complete and clear sign production. So these are the 5 ASL parameters that we're going to talk about today. And we're going to talk about how to understand these things receptively. As we continue, it's going to become very clear to you and you're going to feel confident moving forward. I would like to ask that you please hold your questions until the end, unless you feel like your question is imperative and you have to know right now. If that's the case, go ahead and type it in the chat. I do have somebody that's going to moderate that. They'll let me know, draw my attention to it, and we'll have a brief discussion. However, it is my preference that you hold your questions to the end, and then we will have a Q&A session. But again, if there are any questions right now in this moment, you can feel free to ask. Okay. Oh, give me 1 second. Actually, let's go back for a moment. When focusing on those 5 ASL parameters, hand shape, movement, location, palm orientation, and non-manual signs, I'm going to go ahead and give you an example. So I want you to watch and learn. I want you to see what those 5 parameters may look like. So if I'm holding my hand like this is the number 5. You see the hand shape? It's a spread palm. This hand shape is different, right? Different hand shapes between the two. Now, palm orientation, you see the difference. Facing you, facing downward, facing upward. That is palm orientation. Now, when we concentrate on movement, you see that my hand is moving. It's moving in a circular motion. You can bring the hand to the chin, which incorporates location, or to the forehead. So at the chin, the sign becomes mother. You see the open hand shape. The movement is a little bit different, and the location is different. Again, there's different in hand shapes, there's a different in movement, and this sign here is mother.
This is Jen. I see you fine. Yeah, I'm wondering if it's what device you're on.
If you're using an iPhone or an iPad, you may have some difficulty seeing me. If you're using a laptop or a computer, it's typically clearer, I believe anyway. Melissa, are you okay? And we've confirmed that the interpreter can see me, so we're going to go ahead and continue. So again, mother, mom. Let me see if I can pin myself. Okay. Mother, you see the open palm. Mom. Dad. Father. Father, you see the movement of the fingers or the lack of movement. Lack of movement indicates dad. Movement indicates father. And dear. You see the movement is different. The words are different. The meanings are different. And that's all concentrated on hand shape. So I wanted to share that example with you. And that is something that is very common. Also something critical to sign production. Classifiers, what we're concentrating on today, are applicable throughout these 5 parameters. I will be repeating, I will be stopping, and I will continue to circle back to the parameters. And you're going to see those repeated throughout tonight's presentation. The next thing we're going to talk about, I am going to offer an explanation, and I will be utilizing the interpreter. However, there are some slides with pictures, and I would ask that the interpreter mute, and I want you all to practice signing and practice your receptive skills. That will lead to important conversation within everyday life and how to use classifiers. So we're going to do that training for about the last half hour. The next thing we're going to talk about are 8 classifiers. There's been research by linguists, and they've identified 8 classifiers. Perhaps there are more. I tend to suspect that we've maxed out at 8, however, so that's what I'm going to review today. You can see those 8 classifiers on the slide, and in parentheses, you'll see abbreviations that I use often. I usually don't use the words like descriptive classifier. I'll say DCL. The location or locative classifier, I'll say LCL, and you'll see those outlined. And I'll be using those abbreviations throughout the presentation. Sometimes I'll have a picture, we'll describe the picture, and we're going to use classifiers. In that instance, I will reference DCL, ICL, ECL, as you see outlined on the slide. I will show you each of these. Okay, let me go back. I think I need to go ahead and explain the 8 classifiers before we get started. The first one, DCL, is a descriptive classifier. A descriptive classifier means it's describing something, perhaps the size of something, the shape of something, what something looks like, the appearance of something. So it's an overall description. For example, in a car, you can use this classifier to indicate a car. You could demonstrate that the car is in a showcase or a showroom, or you can do this to indicate that the car is moving. But this hand shape describes the car. If you have a person, you're going to use this classifier. You can see it's different than the car. The shape is different. So again, here we see an example of shape, and that's BCL, and you can see that in the list. BCL is a body classifier. So this is an entire person. Go ahead, try it with me. Again, this is a BCL. Car. This becomes DCL, the descriptive classifier. A ball, for example, for sports, there's a variety of shapes, right? When you consider a ball used in a sport, for example, a football shape, what might that look like? You know, when you envision a football, what is the first thing that you see? What is the shape that you think of? You think of a shape much like this, because a football is shaped like this. Basketball, we envision this shape, right? This is the hand shape that we would use to indicate basketball. And we're showing the ball, if you will. Baseball. Baseball would be much smaller. Golf, again, would be even smaller. And why is that? You're showing the size. You're showing that a golf ball is very small. That's a descriptive classifier as compared to a basketball or a football. Frisbee. You see the changes. You see the changes in the hand shapes, and those are descriptive classifiers. You can think of a picture. I recommend every time you see an English word, don't read the English word, but think of a picture. So now you see the picture and you can think of what classifier may be good based on the picture or the visual rather than based on the English word. So when we think of a football, of course, we think of what the football looks like physically. Everyone good? Looks like we're changing interpreters. Okay.
Okay. The next classifier, the LCL, is the locative. That shows where something is, where relevant to other things. Suppose, for example, there's a bookshelf and there's a coffee mug on the top of the bookshelf. So you can see how there are books on the shelves and there's a mug on the top. So instead of saying on the third shelf, on the top shelf, you just show one shelf, two shelves, three shelves. You show the three shelves, and then you show the classifier with the shape of the mug on the top of the third shelf. It shows where, or you could show that it's on the next shelf down or the next shelf up. You can show where that cup is, or you can show the cup being placed on the shelf, moving on to the shelf. You put the cup on the shelf, you see the movement, or you could put the cup under the shelf, right? That's a locative, and it matches the classifier, the descriptive classifier. See how you can you use the classifier to show the shape of the mug, and then the movement to show where. So you have a DCL and an LCL. You're showing where you're putting that mug. It gives you the whole big picture. That's an LCL, a locative. So you can see a very clear picture. You don't need as many English words, but it gives you a beautiful picture in front of you. It's very visual. It's more visual than English. Okay, an ICL is an instrumental. Instrumental, what does that mean? It's a thing. It's like tools or things. Like, for example, if you're eating, you've got a fork or a spoon or a knife. Some people sign knife with the top hand moving side to side or back and forth. There are different ways to sign knife. You can show a spatula, how you're flipping something over, or picking something up with pinchers or tongs. You can show how you are dropping something like spreading cheese on a pizza. You can show putting on makeup. There's different ways you can use this instrumental classifier, like putting on lipstick. You can use lipstick as a classifier, or putting on different kinds of makeup, concealer, mascara, blush, powder. You're showing all the different ways you can put on makeup with a little spritz of perfume or scent. You can show how you're using hairspray. That finger bending could be hairspray. Those are all classifiers. And we call them instrumental. That's like how you use a particular tool. So another example might be carpentry. If you're doing carpentry, you're showing how to hammer. You can see a picture very clearly of the hammer. You see how the whole forearm is moving to show the hammer, and you're not hammering out in space or to the left or to the right. You're hammering right towards your other hand where you see the locative classifier of the nail. You see my other hand is representing the nail. There's the nail in my right hand. So I'm using a descriptor of the nail. I can show if it's a long nail or a short nail. I can show the hammer. I can show a screwdriver. I can show the twisting of a screwdriver. And I can show the movement of a saw. Or I can have an electric saw. You see what I'm doing with my mouth? You see how I'm using a non-manual symbol for when I puff out my cheek? That's an NMS, a non-manual symbol to show a machine. This is a saw, like a buzz saw. This is a manual saw. You can see I use a different mouth movement. They're both the word saw, but you can see a difference in the manual saw, and then look at my mouth for the electric saw. Or you can show a plain saw. You see how it's on a tabletop saw. It's a rotary. You see how you puff out both sides of your mouth so that it's equal. So you see the locative, you're showing the description of the two sides of the piece of wood, so, or whatever you're cutting. So you learn all the different kinds of classifiers and put them together. There's the descriptive, the instrumental, and the body. And now we move, well, now we'll talk about body parts. BPC, body part classifiers. We use a lot to show, especially with children, like, are you hurt? Where are you hurt? Oh, did you hurt your head? Did you hurt your feet? Did you hurt your wrist? Did you hurt your ankle? You can use the wrist to represent the ankle. So you would only focus on using the top half of the body. So you're using your arms to represent legs and your hands to represent feet. Those are body part classifiers. And we use the second half of the arm to be the bottom of the leg and the hand to represent the feet. And you might turn your hand upside down to show the bottom of the foot. If you want to show something swollen, you can move it bigger like that, but you can show where the swelling is taking place. If the swelling is on the top of the foot or the side of the foot or the bottom of the foot. You don't have to memorize everything right now, but you take it apart, you analyze it piece by piece, and you'll see how this works. As far as the body part classifiers, another example for feet would be knees. Like if you want to say your knees hurt, oh, your knees hurt. You're showing the joints of the knees. You're using your two fists to show the joints in the knees. You're narrowing it down and you're using your fists to represent the joints where the knees connect. That's a body part classifier. And that's very descriptive, how the joints, and it's locative also. And so see what I'm doing with my mouth using the non-manual symbols? It's very comprehensive. We use everything at the same time. The next thing we're going to talk about is semantics. Semantics represent things that move or things that show things that are in motion, like bicycling and going up and down and, you know, all the different ways you can ride a bike, and the wheels go up and down, and you can see how the bike might bounce off the bouncy road, and you can see where the bike is. But as the classifier moves, you see the hands move, and you see the bounciness, and then you see it comes to a stop. The movement is very important. Look at an airplane. We can show an airplane moving. You can show the airplane going upside down, going in a circle. You see all the movement. Or a car. You see the driver weaving in and out among all the cars. And you see the car moving from lane to lane and moving among the lanes. Those kinds of things are all in motion, and they represent semantics. And that's action. Things are in action, like the airplane moving, the car changing lanes, motion. The last two are elements. There are three different parts of elements that I'll tell you about: air, water, and fire. I'll show you air, water, and fire. Let me show you the classifier, how we use to describe what we use to describe a flame. So we light a match and there's a little flame, or you light a match and you light something else like a candle, and then the flame becomes on the candle. It's transferred from the match to the candle. And then you see the larger flame. So you change from a small flame to larger flames. And you can show a big fire, like a big bonfire with lots of flames. You can spread out your hands, but you're still using the wiggling fingers pointing upward. They're all fire, but you can show the size of the fire. These are all classifier descriptions of flames. Then we have water. Water is a descriptive classifier. So here's an example. Here's water dripping. You turn on the faucet and the water is dripping. Or one drop, another drop, another drop. And that's an example of water dripping. You see the drip, drip, or a steady flow. Like that's running water when I do it with my 4 fingers extended, as opposed to the 1 finger shows dripping. Drip, drip, drip. Then you can see water rising up, like you are filling something with water. You want, or with any kind of a liquid. So what's this other hand? The other hand is a cup or a glass. So the right hand is representing the cup or the glass, and the left hand is a classifier showing the element, representing how the water is rising in the glass, and the drip or the leak and the filling, or the filling of a lot of water, like a flood and rushing waters. You can have a wave, you know, like in the ocean. A person can be swimming in the water and the water is moving gently. That also represents water. And then we'll talk about air. Air can be windy and whooshing. A person can be bicycling down a hill and the water is, and the air is, you know, blowing their hair out behind them. So we've talked about fire, air, and water. Those are the elements. And I've showed you some examples, and I'll show you some more. The last topic is PCL, which is plurality classifiers, when there's several of something. For example, if there's one person, here 1 single finger represents a person. If you have 2 people, you might have 2 fingers representing the 2 people. This could be a BCL, a body classifier. Each of those fingers represents a vertical person, but it's plural for people. You can see there's 2 of them. If there were 4 people, you would use 4 fingers. If you had 5 people, you would use 5 fingers. If you had a whole parade of people, you might use all 10 of your fingers. You can show that there's many. If you have a car, here's a line of cars, like a line of traffic. If you have a house, here's a house here, and maybe there's emptiness all around. One house plopped in the middle of a big piece of property, but then a second house plops down in the piece of property. Now it's a plural classifier. It's still also a descriptive classifier because here's a house and here's a house. And this is an LCL and a DCL and a PCL. Why is it an LCL? Because it shows the location of the 2 houses with respect to each other. It's a descriptor because you're seeing the 2 houses and now you're seeing them next to each other. And also, if you puff out your cheek like that, you can show that there's many of them all over the place. And you can see that it's plural. So the same idea, you could have a bunch of cars parked in a parking lot, or a bunch of bicycles lined up next to each other, or motorcycles parked side by side. Look at my mouth when I'm doing this. You can see a lot of information. So that is a description, a welcome to the 8 different types of ASL classifiers. And now we will move on to our training, and you'll see how different things apply. So I do want to warn you, at the same time, you're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 things in sequence. And at the same time, I'm going to be demonstrating things, but we'll have some time to practice. And what's really important for this afternoon is that when you're finished class, you are going to understand the 8 classifiers. You're going to understand, you have to understand them before you actually use them. If you don't understand them, you won't use them well. So that's the point of learning how to apply these 8 classifier concepts. First, you want to learn how to use the 5 different hand shapes at the same time. You need to be able to borrow and apply these hand shapes to different situations, like a car. Here's an airplane hand shape. Here's a kitty cat hand shape. So you can see the whiskers. It's an LCL. because the whiskers are near the mouth. So a car tends to drive on the road. So there's a location involved. An airplane looks like it's up in the air, and you have an SCL there. So you have to think and see the pictures and try to apply what you're learning today. That is our goal. That's one step at a time. So next we'll see, how we use each thing and how we use these classifiers in everyday life. So I hope to give you a visual picture of how we use ASL classifiers, because the goal is to have less words or less signs. Now we'll have a little bit of practice. Okay. So real life, we are celebrating 1 year of COVID. 1 year of COVID. Wow. COVID, this is the sign for COVID. Yes, COVID-19. We've been thinking about classifiers and descriptive classifiers. So I want to show you, the COVID molecule is what it looks like. It's like round with all those things sticking out of it. And so we use this sign for COVID to show the classifier of the molecule with the things sticking out of it. We have many classifiers involved with COVID now, and we have to think about how we're going to teach our children and how we're going to use these classifiers in everyday conversation related to COVID. Or going back to school. We'll have some applications for back to school either now or in the fall, because we are starting to think about kids going back to school. And the third is the COVID-19 pandemic. Now let's look at these classifiers. I'm going to show you these two pictures, but then I'm going to stop and let you practice. And if you think if you need to know a sign for a word, open your camera, show your camera and make it more visual and show me what you want. But for the first two, let's look at these two pictures. What do you see? What is the first picture? What kind of classifier is that?
Here you see two people sitting. And the classifier is a BCL, body classifier, representing two people. We also have a PCL, right? We've got two. So we're indicating plurality. You also see computer screens. So you've got one person looking at one screen. And you've got the teacher who has many screens in front of him. You can see several of those screens. This hand shape becomes a descriptive classifier, as well as a plural classifier, as well as the locative, the LCL. So when you look at that picture, those are the hand shapes and classifiers you should envision. Let's talk about the table for a moment. You have the table and the chair that is slightly underneath of the table. You have headphones, so you've got earmuffs, and then you've got a headband, if you will. If you take the headset off, then it becomes relaxed on your neck. You put it back on your head, and then you take it off once more. Here we're demonstrating an LCL because we're demonstrating the location. We're also focusing on a DCL because we're describing. Perhaps we had earbuds or a Bluetooth earpiece or an over-the-ear headset. Again, these are descriptive classifiers. So when you look at this picture, these are the things that you should envision. Are there any questions related to this first example, this first picture that we've talked about? So let's move on to the building. classifiers might you use for a building? We've got one school. Okay, so we might demonstrate it as such. But what if I needed to describe the school? What does the school look like? What does it look like, that school building? So we can give some hand shapes, we can develop structure, there may be some poles. So the building is horizontal, goes upward, has a roof that is peaked, and has poles. There may be a school bus sitting out front. We can still indicate the school building with our left hand and the school bus with the right. Again, concentrating on LCL. Would anyone like to volunteer to describe something else in relation to the school? Maybe technology, maybe a classroom. Anyone want to share before I jump on to the next example? I guess not. Okay. All right. Okay. So here are some other examples, and I do want you guys to copy sign. Obviously, I can't see you, but I do encourage you to be receptive of what I'm sharing with you and copy sign, or you can volunteer a question to say, you know, hey, what is the sign for technology? For example, phone. A long time ago, phones looked like this, right? Technology has evolved and now phones look like this, or mobile phone is signed like this, so phone. Some people sign this because the letter I is indicative of phone, so it's iPhone. I don't tend to do that. Personally, I tend to fingerspell. But what are some other words that you want to know related to technology? Let me take a look at the chat. There's nothing in there. So an iPad. Here you see the sign for iPad. And the reason being, you have a touch screen. So if you're surfing on your iPad, this is what you're doing. Kind of a swipe right, swipe left, swipe up. Laptop, you see underneath of the phone. Laptop, right? You open and close that device. You can type on the keyboard. Laptop. The sign laptop is a DCL. It's a descriptive classifier. Could also be SCL and could be BPCL because you're using the hands to type. ICL is also included here as an instrumental classifier because it shows you using the keyboard, actively typing on the keyboard. Back to school. There's a lot happening in this picture, but there's a lot of important concepts with back to school. Scissors. Why do you think it's signed like this? Well, here I have some scissors. Here I have the sign. The classifier is conceptually accurate to the actual item. Scissors are a noun, so they would be signed like this. Now, if we're using scissors as an action verb, we would be demonstrating an SCL, a semantic classifier, as we're actively cutting. Maybe it's very difficult to cut. We're really putting a lot of effort into it. We're still using that same motion. So you've got the difference between a noun or an action, but the hand shape is the same. Same thing with writing with a pencil. Some people sign pencil. A long time ago, people used to kind of dab the lead with their tongue. Some people sign pencil. Pen. Typically, you fingerspell pen, P-E-N, and then the sign for writing. So for colors, you would sign color and then maybe pencil, colored pencil, colored marker, still the same hand shape. A ruler, scissors, pencils, pens, a microscope, perhaps. This is a lens or a magnifying glass. Maybe you're inspecting some ants or some bugs with a magnifier. Paper. Pay close attention to the direction. Paper, if you do this, you're actually signing cleaning. This is the appropriate sign towards your body for paper. School, two hands kind of clapping together. Open palms, paper. Closed palms, school. Book. You can see the hand shapes. You see the difference in closed fingers, spread fingers. Here I'm demonstrating paper. Here I'm demonstrating school. And here I'm demonstrating book. College. College. Also the same sign for university. University, college. They're synonymous. School, paper, cleaning. Do you see the nuances? You have to be careful, and those 5 parameters of ASL are so critical. I'm going to do them again. The movement is different. Paper, school, book. Paper, school, book. Laptop, laptop. Okay. Scissors, glue, glue. Some people sign glue like this. Here in Maryland, the sign is glue. I typically sign it like this, glue, because you squeeze the bottle and glue comes out of the nozzle. Colored pencils, notebook. So book, right, we reviewed that, but now we're adding the finger spelling of note, N-O-T-E, book. Maybe you have a binder, and that's a DCL. You've got 1, 2, 3, making it a PCL, and also LCL because we're showing the top, the middle, and the bottom for those binder rings. So again, we're using multiple classifiers at the same time. Oh, and lest I forget, bringing the red apple. Bringing the red apple for the teacher. And you see what I'm doing here. This is an ICL, an instrumental classifier, an SCL, semantic, from me to the teacher, and I'm holding the apple. I'm giving the apple to the teacher. Those are classifiers. backpack. Some people sign backpack like this. Maybe it's a really heavy backpack. Some people sign backpack like this to indicate the straps of the backpack. Packing the backpack, and you see my lips. That's plural because I'm putting multiple things in. It's also an LCL because I'm taking the things from my surrounding and putting them into the one backpack. So that becomes a locative classifier. Also a semantic classifier because there's action there of putting those items into the backpack. So you could say your book, your pencils, your paper, did you already put them in your backpack? Yes, I've already packed them in my backpack. Great, good job. And that's how the conversation with children would go about a backpack. Homework, home, work. Finished? Are you finished your homework? Where is your homework? Where's your homework? And you can use classifiers with questions, with descriptions, with action items, action verbs. You can use classifiers, and I want you to think in classifiers rather than English word order. It's so much more visual. Now we're going to shift gears and we're going to talk about health and wellness. So which classifiers do we use? How about if you guys help me? Let's talk about which classifiers are using, or which classifiers we should be using. Let's try it. We're going to do some practice. Are you guys ready? Yes? No? Well, I can't see you, but we're going to give it a go. Okay, so I'm going to point to Kristen. Do you mind sharing your camera? Kristen, do you mind? Can you describe the first picture? Hi, Kristen. Hello. Do you mind describing the first picture? How would we use classifiers in this first picture? Go ahead. Right, maybe sticking your tongue out. Good, great, good job. So what Kristen is demonstrating is an LCL. Oh, Kristen, come back, do that again. I want to see you. Okay, good job. All right, so the rest of the group, look at me. The LCL, right? It's right in this area. But it's not the whole area, it's just the throat. It's a sore throat. Oh, does that hurt? Right here, it's a sore throat. Good. And the facial expression needs to match, right? Maybe squinted eyes, maybe you're rolling your head a little bit, or you could say sore throat, like this, kind of in a pinching motion as you rub your throat. Oh, my throat hurts. Not like this, but like this, with your index finger and your thumb. All right, great job. Let's celebrate Kristen. Good job. Okay. Now, all right, ready or not, don't be afraid. The next person is not going to be Melissa. The interpreters are not allowed to play. So how about Imelda? Imelda, how about if you pop up on camera and can you show me the next picture after sore throat? The picture to the right, please. Okay, all right, good. Stay there, don't leave me. All right, good. Again, focusing on an LCL seems to be the easiest thing to do. It's my head, right? But this, we want to do just our index fingers, 2 index fingers, And we want that face to match, right? I've got a headache. Or maybe your head is pulsing, it's just pounding. And this is how you would use a classifier. Headache. Good. Perfect. Again, do it again with me. Headache. And then the pounding headache. Great. And you see your facial expressions? That's great. Good job. Let's celebrate Imelda. Good. Good work. Okay, you may turn your camera off. And next, let's go with Lauren. Lauren, are you ready? We're going to do the next one to the right after headache. Lauren, are you still there, Lauren? I guess not. Okay, moving on. How about Claudia? Claudia, are you ready? Okay. All right, Claudia. So the one right after headache, what's the sign for that? Okay, good, good. The facial expressions are great. Good, you can feel that in your chest, right? You've got a cough, and the facial expressions, you can kind of see that cough coming out. So this is the sign for cough. You know, maybe you've got a sore throat with the cough. Good, great job. All right. You may turn your camera off and let's move on to Natasha. Natasha. Hello. Okay. So we're going to do the bottom left. Show me what you think. Oh, really? You can't see? Okay. So, right, good. Good. You kind of see, you know, the exasperation in the shoulders, and you're using the classifier with your hands. Good job. Perhaps you've got legs and your legs are just kind of giving out. That's where that sign comes from. Right, absolutely. Good work. Okay, you may turn your camera off and hopefully you'll be able to see me. Moving to Christine. Christine.
Christine, are you ready? We can move to Christine. All right. Hello, Christine. You ready, Christine? Here we go. The next one, fever. Okay. Okay, that's good. You could, cool yourself off if you're really hot. That was a really good try. Great. Right, you're trying to like wave the air, like fan yourself. You might have a temperature. The temperature might be high and hot. You need to cool yourself off. Right. So use that 5-hand shape where you put the back of your hand on your forehead. That could show a fever or a temperature. And it shows the temperature going up, up, up. And this is the sign for temperature or fever. But it's good to show the back of your hand against your forehead, like you're sweaty and hot, and you're cooling yourself off like a fan. Good, good, good job. Okay, you could also finger spell the word fever or temperature, fever. Okay, good job. Last one, who hasn't gone yet? Regina. Regina. Here you are. Hello. Oh, looks like you are out there in the sunshine at the beach. Yes. You must be hot. Lucky you. I want to trade places with you. I want to trade with you. I want to be where you are. All right. So anyway, show me the last one. Like drippy nose. Okay, right. Like you're blowing your nose, like a drippy nose, or you could show how it goes in your sinuses and then all comes dripping out the nostrils. Remember the ECL, the element classifier. Remember the element classifier of your drippy nose, the liquid coming out of your nose. So enjoy the beach, Regina. Thank you, Regina says. All right, perfect. Next, we're going to go to COVID. So you know the sign for COVID. We've been dealing with COVID for a while. It's been a good discussion to teach children, like to show them how to make a very clear picture, how to be safe. That is so important. So this is important. There's 4 different steps here. So the first of the 4 is masks. Masks. Some people use a different hand angle in having your wrists pointing up instead of to the side. But typically we have our wrists coming out to the 2 sides. Why do we sign mask? And how can we show the concept of a mask, why it's so important? Look at the yellow box on the PowerPoint. See the English there? Check out the English. It says protect yourself and others by wearing a mask. That's English. That's a whole English sentence. So you say protect yourself and others by wearing a mask, or mask, either way you choose to sign it. So that's the English version. That's like signed English. But with classifiers, it's much easier. How can we demonstrate classifier use when we're showing this to a child? Any volunteers? Anybody want to raise their hand and show us in a little box how you can use classifiers related to masking? Who's a volunteer? Come on, somebody, let's have some practice here. Anybody? Anybody? Do I have to pick somebody? Miss Lee? Miss Lee, are you here? Are you ready? Hello. All right, how are you doing? It's a good try. Let's see how you can describe using a very important mask. How would you use a classifier to describe a mask? So the sign must and then the sign mask. Ricky says good, but why? You have to expand on it a little bit. To protect COVID. Miss Lee says protect COVID. Ricky says, but how? How? Look at me for a second. We're thinking about classifiers, and you did a good job. You did a very good job. I know you're thinking about classifiers, but how can we use a classifier to represent the spread of COVID? Okay. Like you're showing a cough and then the spreading of the germs. So if you cough, now you do it with me. So cough and then the germs all spread out all over the place, right? That is the element classifier. You're showing like if there were no mask, then the germs would spread out everywhere. Or you could show how the germs come right back in and the germs go out or the germs stay in. Prevention. protect yourself. Okay, you do it again. Show. Copy me. Copy what I'm going to do. Okay, you ready? Copy me. Okay. Must, the sign for must, the sign for mask. Why? If no mask, if you don't wear a mask, the germs spread out everywhere. Or the germs stay within. It's better to wear a mask. To protect yourself and others. Excellent. Good job. Terrific. Thank you, Miss Lee. Good job. You tried. Great. Good, really good work. Okay, next, the second picture here, the second box, 6 feet apart. The English words are 6 feet apart. So, how are you going to use, or which classifiers would you use? I'm going to pick somebody. I'm going to pick Crystal. No. Kristen. Or somebody else who hasn't gone yet. Let's see. I don't know who hasn't gone yet. All right, let's go again. Kristen, I know you went before, but great, thank you. So I'm glad to see you again. Now, the second picture there, the second yellow box, can you describe, which classifiers would you use to describe 6 feet apart? Ricky says, okay, show the distance, show pushing people apart. But what other classifier is possible? What about a BCL, a body classifier? Or a body part classifier? How would you use a body classifier? Each vertical finger represents a person. So a vertical finger is a person. That's a BCL. So you have one over here and one over there, and you could have them all very spread out. All the people are very spread out, and you can use the sign apart, and you're showing the distance is 6 feet, F-E-E-T. We'll do the whole thing together again. I'm going to demonstrate. 6 feet apart, must, or you have to be 6. This person's here, that person's there, and then you sign 6 feet to show the distance between the two fingers or people. Let's do it again, one more time, Kristen. Here's a person, you're going to put the people apart, 6 feet apart. Excellent. Wow, great. Yay, good work. Okay. Next, who has not taken a turn yet? Let me see who else hasn't gone yet. I don't know how many people we have. Wait, let me look and see. What other people do we have? All right, there's 12 people, so who else? Oh yeah, there's one more. I need to back up. Imelda. Imelda, can you try this on the third box where it says avoid touching in crowds? Imelda. Okay, great. The third box. All right. So you show 2 people coming together and touching, like shaking hands. So demonstrate like 2 people shaking hands and then say, no, don't. 2 people, and then they come together, they shake hands or hug. You can demonstrate hugging and then do the sign, don't. Right. So do the whole thing all together. Okay, two people apart, come together, shake hands, hug. Don't. Ricky says, excellent, great job, yay, good work. Yep, come together, shake hands, hug, chat. No, don't. Good job, Imelda. All right, the last one on that screen, Claudia. Claudia, can you do the last one all the way to the right? Okay, the last yellow box. Wash your hands with water and soap for 20. Ricky's correcting your sign for 20. Look what fingers he's using for 20. SEC is seconds. Just spell SEC. Good. Again. Wash your hands, water and soap. Wash your hands 20 seconds. Ricky says, good work. And soap, you put your fingers into the palm of your opposite hand, not the back of your hand. So copy me for the sign for soap. Your dominant hand wipes the soap from the palm of your other hand. And you have your water and your soap and you wash your hands and you use your mouth your mouth morphemes, right? Good. Excellent. So all of you are practicing classifiers. You are doing a great job. So the next thing we're going to look at all right. Now we're in a classroom. So imagine you're in a classroom and it's COVID time, so things have changed. The policies have changed. All new policies within school. Before in school, kids would sit in desks right next to each other. So we're going to use body part classifiers and descriptive classifiers. This classifier represents a seat, and you can see the seats are very close to each other. It's PCLs because it is, if you look at me, look at my hands, what I'm doing, you're seeing the legs bent, which represents sitting in a chair, and you see that they're very close together. You see the bent legs close. Now we've changed that. It's not that anymore. Now we have far apart. So one seat and then a space, and then another seat and a space. And you see the empty space between the seats. So watch me. Here's a seat, empty space, seat, empty space, seat. Before there was seat, 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 all lined up next to each other. But now seat, empty, seat, empty space, seat. Got it? Or you can have desks. This is the sign for desk. And you're going to describe, here's a desk, because it's flat. Your arm is flat like a tabletop. If you had a chair, you would use the bent leg classifier. But for a desk, you use the flat arm representing the flat tabletop. And then you use the other arm, your other hand, to represent more flat tabletops. But then you use the empty sign in between the desktops. Now we see how the desks are moved all apart. See how you're spreading out and using the LCLs to separate the desks. Show the separation of the desks. All right, the classifiers for sitting in the classroom. We use a PCL, a DCL, and an LCL. 3. In the middle, what possible classifiers do you see for that middle picture? Look at the picture and what possibilities do you see? What does the picture tell you? You see two people. There's a doctor with a mask saying, no, 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 or you must wash your hands. You must wash your hands. You see the doctor telling the person that you must wash your hands. You must wash your hands. Wash your hands, right? The PCL is the hands, the plural. Then there's the SCL. Remember that was semantics. That shows the movement, what you're doing with your hands. You're using the soap. You're soaping up your hands. And you're making all the bubbles and the lather. That's very descriptive. All the white lather of the soap is all over. And that's demonstrated also by puffing your cheeks. And you're seeing the water turn on. That's an ICL. And a DCL. You're turning the water, then you're making the water run from the faucet. Then you're washing your hands. I'm going to give you more practice on this, but this is washing your hands. We're focusing on the element classifier of the water coming down. All right, the last picture here is masks. You can either use the wrists vertical or horizontal, and you're demonstrating coughing and spreading germs. Look at what I'm doing with my mouth. Ooh, it's dirty, it's germy, and somebody's coughing and spreading the germs. Or you can show the germs coming back in and inhaling the air. So the other person is, we're using the elemental signs. One person is coughing it out and the other person is inhaling the germs in. The cough goes out and the germs go out. Their germs are floating around in the air, and the mask will prevent those germs from going out, or the masks will prevent the germs from being inhaled. So protect yourself and others. So keep that in mind and practice wearing masks. Classifiers come in so handy with either masks or masks. You can use either sign with either classifier to prevent the spread of germs, and we're using the elemental classifier as a descriptor. You can use a body part classifier because it's the mouth and you're showing the mouth, that area, the germs come out of the mouth or come out of the nose. You can do that also.
Okay, now you see we've got some illustrations of hand washing. You see the water running, and there are 6 pictures in this first photo. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 circles with images in each. So here we're showing a sequence. So we're giving instructions on how to wash your hands. We just practiced the classifiers, so now we're doing this for the 3rd time. Mind you, this is intentional. And so we're going to wash our hands. We're going to concentrate on that for the 3rd time so it sticks. You can teach children or other people how to wash their hands using classifiers. All right. Is there anyone that wants to volunteer, or do I have to point somebody out? How about if somebody that I haven't called on yet volunteers to describe this picture, just concentrating on number 1 and washing your hands? Can I get a volunteer that hasn't gone yet? Still nothing? Okay. How about Natasha? All right. Hello again. All right. So if you could describe the first photo with the 6 blue images. And Natasha asks all of them? Yes. So again, bear in mind, this is a sequence. Oh, great start. Go ahead. So first, we're going to turn the water on. Second, we're going to get our soap and lather up. Third, we've got some running water that we're going to rinse with and really continue to lather well. Fourth, we're going to continue to lather. And then we're going to dry our hands. Dry, the sign for dry, right. So how do we dry our hands? How do we get our hands dry? This is Natasha, great question. We would use a towel. This is Ricky, a towel, correct. So we would finger spell towel, T-O-W-E-L. Great, good job, Natasha. So again, when we've got a sequence, that means we're practicing the fluidity of that sequence. We're going in order. So I want everyone to copy sign, including Natasha, even though she just demonstrated. So we're gonna wash our hands. The first thing we do, you can use your thumb or your index finger. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna turn the water on, and it's best to use warm water. We're gonna use some soap. Perhaps it's a pump. The water is going to continue running, and you see what I'm doing with my mouth. So we're going to continue this. Pictures 2 through 5, we're going to continue really scrubbing and lathering our hands, getting in between our fingers, scrubbing really well. And then with the water, we're going to rinse our hands. When we're done, we're going to dry them with a towel. We're going to finger spell towel, and we're going to wipe our hands dry. So you can see we're using a lot of classifiers in that sequence. Okay, moving right along. Now, I just lost the word. What is that? Oh, right, PPE, personal protective equipment, PPE. So protective equipment, how we're going to protect ourselves. So the gear or the outfit, if you will. So when I demonstrated gear, we're talking, head to toe, full body. But how do we separate that out to start with what we're going to place on our head or what we're going to place on our face that may fit over our forehead? For example, the shield. And you see that the facial shield is the first circle in the picture. Right here where my cursor is. So we're going to place it on our head. And that's going to show us where, and then we're going to demonstrate the shield. Mask, some people do mask like this, which means it's going to cover primarily your nose and your mouth. And then it may have some ear hooks. And again, the other two signs for mask that we've already discussed. Moving down, we've got some goggles. So we're going to place those over our eyes. Now we're not going to cover our entire face because the goggles are for our eyes specifically. So again, we're concentrating on the locative classifier, only covering our eyes, and our descriptive classifier is our goggles. And once more, the locative is over our eyes. If we cover our face, there is a difference. So when we go from our head down, then we're talking about all over gear. And then we've got this idea of a hood, perhaps a hood that ties, perhaps a hood that covers our face very tight and close. And then we've got our face shield, gloves perhaps. You can see here gloves and boots. Boots. So we would slip on our boots. We would put them on. And there's two of them, right? So that's a PCL. And then the SCL, the semantic classifier, because we're putting them on and we're also showing where we're going to put those on. So that's PPE. Moving on to the last picture, we've got a pump, much like this one right here. You can see that there's a pump that you have to press down for the liquid to come out, and you can see that my cheek is puffing out, or perhaps you can use your lips, and then you've got a glob on your hands that you would need to rub in very well. So that could be indicative of your hand sanitizer. I do believe I've got another one here. Okay. Okay, I stopped my screen sharing. And now you can see the visual components. You want to think about what you see, what you've learned today. And again, it's critical that you understand. I don't want you to be overwhelmed. You may feel a bit overwhelmed, but as I've seen you guys practice, you've done well. And this is a great way to introduce you to the foundational concepts before you begin utilizing classifiers. So you want to consider what you're observing, and you want to keep those 5 ASL parameters in mind as you're using these classifiers. For example, cat. Why is it like this? Cat. Lion. Lion. Why? You know, lion has that hair, that mane, and then tiger. You know, a tiger is a big cat, you know, a cat, a domesticated cat versus a tiger, you know, this big wild cat. A giraffe. So again, you're getting the picture, the whole picture, if you will, via a classifier. And that's what you want to practice. You want to practice what hand shapes are possible. What are the possibilities? Why is giraffe signed like this? It's locative, it's descriptive. Giraffes certainly have long, slender necks. Elephant. Why is the sign like this? Your arm serves as the trunk of the elephant. So you can pick up on these 5 ASL parameters as you see this demonstrated. And now you know how to use them, and this gets the ball rolling. So right now we're just doing an introduction. We're analyzing. I do recommend that you practice. Perhaps you can watch some videos. One example is I have a video that I'm going to show you 2 or 3 times, depending on our time today. And the first time, well, let me think about this. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So the first time, we'll go ahead and have it interpreted. It's a very short video. The second time, there will be no voice interpretation, and I will stop the video throughout. And I want to discuss the different classifiers that are going to be representative. And then the third time, there will be no stopping as well as no voice interpretation. And it's all going to come together. That is exactly what we've been learning today. Let me just check the time. We currently have, yes, we do certainly have time. Give me a moment. Okay. Hmm. Oh, give me 1 second. Okay. All right. Let me see. I'm taking a look at the chat screen. Oh, hang tight. Okay. All right. I'm going to share my screen now. Okay. All right. Oh, give me just a moment here. Bear with me, folks. Okay. All right. Everyone should be able to see the video now. So I'm going to tell you a story of a bus from 1963. The bus was aqua blue, and there were 15 windows throughout the bus. In the front of the bus, there was a window that had 2 panes with a dividing line between it, and those windows opened to let air circulate through. The windows on the side of the bus weren't crank style windows, rather they were sliding windows to open. When I first purchased this, it was a 1600cc with a very weak engine, had to do so much work. I mean, this was a Volkswagen bus, so I replaced the engine to 2400cc. It was a Corvette engine, and put that into this bus, making the bus incredibly powerful. I drove the bus for a few years and then sold the bus. Boy, do I miss that 1963 Volkswagen bus. Okay. All right. Okay, so you were able to see the video, and I was sharing a story about my 1963 Volkswagen bus, and you could see many classifiers in that story. Let's think about the classifiers that we saw. We're going to watch the same clip. The interpreter is going to interpret, and as I point out classifiers, the interpreter will not mention those, but I do want the audience to determine what classifiers are being used. Okay, so we're going to repeat the video. Okay, so as I begin, I introduce and I say, boy, I'll never forget when I owned that 1963 Volkswagen bus. Okay, that's words for the introduction. Then we get into the description of the Volkswagen bus. There were windows around the bus. So DCL, descriptive classifiers. And I'm also showing you where. They weren't on the top, they weren't on the bottom, but they were around the bus. So locative classifiers. It's not a word, it's a classifier. I'm describing, okay? Then as we progress, we talk about the color. It's aqua blue. Again, I'm not focusing on the windows, but I'm focusing on the body of the bus, and you can see that. There are 15 windows throughout the bus, 15 of them. Volkswagens, you know, back then they had 15 windows. And you can see the DCL and the PCL. I'm showing that there's not just one window, but there were two windows, and that there is a dividing line. That's a DCL as well as a locative classifier, showing where that line is and explaining that that line was between the two window panes. And that is all classifiers. There's no English words being used in there at all. So this is an example of ASL classifiers, focusing on the windows, that dividing line. And I wasn't finished talking about that front window. If you continue to watch, I explained that it's not one solid window, it's two separate windows. There are two windows and they open and close. I showed the direction that they open. So we're focusing here on a semantic classifier, indicating how the window opens and how the window closes, as well as a descriptive classifier. But I'm not done yet. I'm still talking about the window with more classifiers as we continue to watch. Why do those windows open like that? So the air comes in and circulates through the bus. There's air that comes in, it circulates, and that is an element classifier representing the air and the circulation of such. How cool. The windows around the bus, how the windows open, that dividing line, the air circulating throughout the bus. So I've talked about a lot of different things using only classifiers. So now I'm done talking about the windows in the front of the bus. As the video continues, you can see here that the windows were not crank style windows, but they had a sliding mechanism. There was a sliding mechanism, so the windows would slide back and forth. There was a little lever you had to pull to open the windows. And that's an ICL, it's an instrumental classifier. In English, we say, how do you open the window? But using ASL classifiers, I described as well as used an instrumental to explain that it was not a crank style, but it was a sliding window. Then as we move on, we are talking about the engine. The old engine that was in the vehicle was kind of weak and, you know, really required a lot of work. I didn't like it, so I put a new engine in. As we continue to watch the video, we can see this DCL showing how that engine was working. And we also have an SCL showing the muscle and the process. And we've also incorporated a non-manual sign here. There's a difference between this and this. and that's the non-manual sign, part of those 5 ASL parameters. You can see that very clearly on the face. And you can see the engine being lifted and placed into the vehicle. So that's a semantic classifier. You see it moving from one location to the next. And location, speaking of, a locative classifier. So you can use many classifiers to explain something, which is an absence in English.
Okay, so let's look back at the 1963 bus. All right. Now, you can see I've stopped and shown you many things. And there's a whole bunch of classifiers in this video. And a lot of people would be very overwhelmed. Some would say, where are the words? Where are the signs? But really, this is true ASL. This is for people who are really skilled with ASL. This is a very important aspect of ASL that you need to understand early in your learning of ASL. So I'm going to show you these over and over again. And then the third time, I'm going to ask the interpreter to not say anything. So I want you to be able to understand it yourselves, you students. So I want you to understand the whole picture of how to use classifiers. And when we're finished, we'll close the video and open it for discussion. Okay, ready? So, don't forget to share your screen. Ah, I forgot to share my screen. Whoops. Wait. Melissa, I've been showing my screen. Oh, shoot. I have to do that again. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to show you these things again. Darn, I thought I already shared my screen. My apologies. Now, here we go. Okay, I wish you had told me earlier. Oh, well. All right, let's see where we are. Okay, wait. All right, now I'm going to show you again, and I'm going to point out and stop the different parts and show you the classifiers. I'm going to tell you, okay, so you see the opening statement, there's no classifiers, just a description of what's going to be coming up. Okay, now you see the overview of the bus. That is an overview of the bus. You see the sides and the front. It's like a VW bus, the old 1960s VW bus. Aqua blue, here's the shape, and it shows the sides. That is the body of the vehicle, and it's aqua blue, and it goes around, and it describes where, that it's around me. Now you see 15 windows, bump, 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 bump. Look at my mouth go, bump, 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 bump. So that's a non-manual sign. It's also a classifier and a descriptor. And there are lots of plural classifiers because there's many windows. And now you can see the front window moves up and down. There's a line, and it's describing the window. and it's a plural because it's a PCL. You're seeing that there are two parts to the window with a line between the two parts to the window. And really, the whole bus is windows all the way around. But you're seeing that it looks like it's two. It's describing that the front is two because of the vertical line between them. Some more descriptors. It's showing how the windows open outside. So it's an SCL, a semantic classifier, because it shows the movement of how the windows move out. It shows that how the bottoms of the windows kick out. And it's also an SCL, right? You can see that. I'm not finished, it keeps going. Don't forget about the front windows. You see the air coming in when the windows open. The air comes whooshing in. What kind of classifier is the air whooshing? Do you remember? The air is an element. So it's an ECL, an element classifier, to show the wind, the air coming in through the windows. And look at my mouth. Right. That is a non-manual sign with my mouth. So you see the windows on the sides, that's a locative and a plural, because you can see multiples on both sides. And the cranks, you see the cranks? That is an ICL, an instrumental classifier, because it shows how the windows go up and down. They're cranks. It's not just a button. There's a clip that has to be pulled out and the windows slide. That is a DCL and a PCL and an ICL and an LCL, all those classifiers at the same time. Then the story is about buying the small engine, the 16 cc's, and how it works. And there's a lot of facial expression involved with that, and with the SCL and the DCL, so that the machine can work. But you have to use your facial expression. It shows that it's an old machine, it's no good, it has to struggle to work. Watch the classifiers here. Can you see it? That's where you see that the engine gets dropped into place. That's a locative, because it shows that the engine came in from another car and gets dropped into that car. So that's a DCL, it's a descriptor, but it also is a locative because it is being moved in from another car. And then the movement shows how it drops into place into the car that I've been describing. That's a lot of classifiers. It's got a lot of power, that car. Okay, so then the story closes. The story ends. So you see all these classifiers. Now we're going to see it again. You're going to watch it again, but no interpreter. The interpreter is going to turn her voice off. Okay. So you could see in that story how we apply all the different types of classifiers. They're separate categories of classifiers, but they overlap with each other. And I wonder if anybody has any questions. We're open to questions and discussion at this point. We have less than 10 minutes left, but we do have time for questions if anybody has any questions related to classifiers. Go ahead and ask your questions. And also there's the survey. That's right. You have to do the survey to finish the class. All right, Melissa. All right, I guess there are no questions. Jen says, thank you very much. Ricky says, any more questions or anything? Seems like it's